Hi guys, Wes here from the Complete Race Driver. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and that is how to approach a track that you've never driven at before for the first time. So at the moment, supercar drivers and teams are preparing for Taupo. Also Porsche Australia drivers are going over there as well, and they're getting ready to drive on a track that for most of them they've never driven at before. So over the last 2 weeks, a lot of drivers have physically gone over there and driven all manner of different cars to try and learn the circuit and find out about it. So that is always going to be the number one thing to do, is to physically get to the track, drive a car and experience it firsthand. But that might not always be the case. So you might be an amateur driver, push for time, you might be, track might be interstate, might be overseas. There might be a whole variety of reasons why you can't physically get to the track and do testing before you hit out for practice one. So today we're going to look at how I would approach going to a new track for the first time, and hopefully how you can do that as well. So put a bit of structure behind it, put a bit of planning, bit of thought, and hopefully that's going to help you when you get to the track for the first time. So let's use Taupo as an example. I've never been there before, so let's go through it together and see how we can approach the track and find out all about it to try and help you become a complete race driver. Okay, so for the first step, what I've done is print out a track map. So I've got the map of Taupo here. I printed this out from the Complete Race Driver website. It has all the Australian track maps for free with all the correct corner numbers as per Motorsport Australia guidelines, all the sectors. So that's a great starting point, and I've done Taupo, first New Zealand track, and the corner numbers are really important to get right. Make sure that you're the same sort of language, all your ducks in a row, so to speak, as your engineer or teammate or other drivers. So you're talking about the right corner. So what might be a kink or a slight bend, some drivers might not classify that as a corner, where others might, and it gets really wishy-washy. So as ever, communication is key, and make sure you got the corner numbers is correct. The other thing is the sectors here with the different colors. So that's going to be critical too once we're at the track for the timing sectors and working out where we're fast and slow. So I'm getting ahead of myself there. Let's bring this up digitally on the screen, and we're going to make some notes just about the general holistic sort of overview of the layout of the circuit before we go for a bit of a deeper dive. So that's step one. Step two, let's take some notes. So here's the layout of Taupo. So 14 corners is the first obvious thing we see. It's 3.32 kilometers in length. So fairly short, fairly tight, 14 corners packed into 3.3 Ks, and it's anti-clockwise. We've got the 3 sectors split up there, 5 corners in the first sector, the blue sector, and then we've got another 6 corners there in the green sector, and then the long back straight down into turns 12, 13 and 14. So of those 14 corners, 7 are left-handers and 7 are right, which is quite unique for circuits. Often it's biased one way to the other, but it's fairly even both directions. So the first thing you can see here is really that there's not a lot of straight lines. So as I mentioned before, 3.32 kilometers, and there's really only one long straight of length, which is between turns 11 and 12. And you can see from this chart that Taupo ranks towards the bottom, towards the shorter end of the time spent at full throttle for a supercar. It's going to be somewhere between, say, Barbagallo or carco.com.au raceway and Townsville, and both of those circuits are under 3 kilometers in length. So Taupo being 3.3 Ks and having that much time on full throttle sort of shows you how many corners. It's biased towards more corners than straights, so that gives us another indication about the circuit. And there's also straight there between the last corner and the first corner It's a very short run from the start finish line down to turn 1, so that's going to impact how our starts are, how we race on that first lap. Also a fairly long section, fairly high speed section all the way from turn 7 through 8. 9's fast sort of kink corner, and then 10 gentle sweeper into 11. So from 7 to 11, okay, it's not a straight, but that's quite a long section there, and most of the corners are packed into those first sort of 7 corners and the last 3. Already we can see that slow speed is going to be important, traction's going to be important coming out of turn 1, very tight corner. Coming out of turn 7, I think that's going to be extremely important corner there. 11, that is quite a long radius corner there. You're in the corner for a long time, and it leads on to the longest straight. So as complete race driver students will know, that's always important to identify the corners where you're going onto a long straight, so you're going to maximize your exit, sacrifice a little bit on the entry or mid part of the corner to get down that straight. And it's no different here with turn 11. 12, 13, 14 look quite a unique series of corners to me, and it's going to be hard to overtake here. Now, usually at the end of the longest straight in the circuit, going to a slow corner, that's going to be the best place to overtake. Turn 12 is not a super tight corner. It's slowing the cars down and drivers down into turn 13, which is a tight corner, and so that's going to make the braking zone quite a bit later, and you're going to still be washing off speed through 12 and then bring it down to the slowest point at 13. So I think it's going to be very hard to get up the inside or even outside of someone there. That back straight is also a drag strip, so that, like a lot of circuits, long straights get incorporated into drag strips sometimes, and that's certainly the case here. Now, one thing we can't see from the track map looking like this is what the vertical elevation change is, what the undulation of the circuit is, and that's always going to have an effect on how the car's balanced, especially for weight transfer, where you position the car on the track. So that's going to be the next port of call. We've looked at it from above. We've identified the slow corners, the fast corners, that we know that's quite twisty in nature. So now let's dive into looking at the track from a different perspective, try and get some 3D understanding. Let's have a look for some video. So like most motorsport people, most drivers have headed to YouTube to try and find some good footage to give myself a bit of an understanding of how the track's laid out, how the racing occurs, what the layout's like with the curbs, the corners, the undulation, elevation change, things of that nature. Now, I know within the Complete Race Driver course I do speak about finding the right category or a similar car to what you run in, whether it's Formula Ford or F4 or 3 or GTs or touring cars, historics, whatever it might be. But in this first instance, what I'm going to do is to try and find a single-seater onboard video, and in this case I found some Formula Ford footage of Blake Dowdall, who's driving here at Taupo. And the reason I've chosen this footage is because A, it's great quality, and B, from a single-seater you get to see the whole circuit in terms of the track edges, the layout of the tarmac, the corners. You're not looking through the letterbox of onboard from inside a car. So if you're inside a touring car or a Porsche or something of that nature, the vision's going to be a lot less. So okay, it doesn't have direct telemetry with the throttle and brake and those type of things, but if we're going over there, we're driving a supercar or we're driving a Porsche or something, and we're not going to be driving specifically a Formula Ford, this video is really good in that first instance, just to try and see what the layout of the track's like and get some idea, because it gives us a great picture of what the track looks like. So here we are coming around the last corner, and what we're going to do is going to watch the whole lap normal speed, just to start getting a bit of an understanding. So we can see that short run down into 1 that we saw on the track map. Tight turn 1. Immediately we see some resurfacing there, and how the driver's approaching these turns. Some more resurfacing, some curb. Track's elevated a little bit here, cresting through turn 4, dropping down into 5. Quite tight. Lots of resurfacing patches everywhere. You know, getting some idea what the curb usage is like. Coming down to the important turn 7, resurfaced. A lot of grip there, a lot of front grip. A little bit of a rise through there. Coming through 8. It's gentle sweeper. Setting ourselves up for turn 9. Looking to see how much curb there is on the entry and exit. This flat out section through the sweeper 10, gentle curve, not really a corner, breaking down into the all-important turn 11, very wide approach, squaring off the exit to maximize the exit, onto the longer straight, through the gears, some resurfacing, some bumps, looking at the brake markers, and coming into 12, which is quite a gradual corner, still braking, slowing the car down into 13, a lot of elevation, dropping down to the final corner 14, bit of exit curb, and that's 1 lap of Taupo. So let's go back and we're going to look at some key identifiers on this circuit. So let's start at the start-finish line and the control line. So a few things we can see from just taking this screenshot and looking at it. Pole is going to be on the left-hand side of the circuit, so first turn's left-hander, so that makes a lot of sense. It's also going to probably be on the dirty side, so it's not on the racing line, so that'll be something to consider if you're on pole. The grid is equal left to right, so it's not a 1x1, it's a 2x2 format with a grid layout. We've got some starting lights up on the left quite high there, so that's good. The flag point is here on the right hand side on pit wall, and we already know it's a short run down to turn 1, so that's just some housekeeping issues there. Always good to know where pole is and which side of the grid you're going to start on after qualifying, and whether it's on the dirty side or the clean side, and also where the lights are. So there are often these things you don't think of till you're on the grid and it's a panic last minute, so just making sure you check off a few of those items. Boring, but they're essential to going racing. So let's go now into turn 1. So what we want to do is we're not really looking at perhaps the speed of this car or the exact racing line at this stage. We're just training our brain to look at some important items. So the end of pit wall here, there's really only a 50-meter brake marker in this instance. That of course might change when supercars gets to town, but we're just looking at what visual markers exist to train our brain for when we get there for braking points, turn-in points, things like that. They are in this instance changing pit exit, so that's going to feed out towards turn 1 here rather than the current long loop that it has. So that's going to make things extremely interesting, I feel, come race time, and even in practice and qualifying, feeding cars out onto the track at 1. So we move things forward. We've got turn 1, tight corner. There is pause halfway through the corner. You can see the curb's relatively low. Gentle sawtooth curb, standard curb. There is a patch there which is on the racing line, which is going to offer more grip, and that's definitely a function of this circuit, is the almost patchwork like nature of the surface. Lots of little patches in the corners, lots of little resurfacing, so that's going to really change the car's balance through each corner, so that's something to be aware of when we get to the circuit and drive it. So we advanced it here, turn 1, And turn 2 follows quite quickly, so it's going to be a compromise between opening up the exit of turn 1, getting some good traction on that right rear tyre to drive out of that slow corner, versus getting all the way across to the left to take the natural racing line for turn 2. So there's already some compromise I can see here at this corner and how best to do it. 2, gentle corner, a little bit banked, again a patch there on the racing line, a little bit banked, track starting to rise up gently. 3 is also very usable, quite a gentle corner, turn 3, and that allows the driver in this instance to hug to the left of the track on the exit of 3 and the approach to turn 4. 4's probably the highest point of the track, if you could call it that. It's got a little bit of a rise here, bit of a blind approach and usable curb, and the exit's dropping down. So how the car responds to that will be interesting as well. You can see there's sawtooth curb and an extra curb on the exit backfill curb, that green curb there, for use if you find ourselves wide. Dropping down towards turn 5, again another patch, usable apex curb. This is quite a tight corner. Slow point here, again this curb on the exit, standard red and white sawtooth curb or orange and white sawtooth curb, and an extra sawtooth curb on the exit there. So slow corner, and this feeds directly into turn 6. We're always turning here, gentle turn 6 onto the new surface of turn 7. So we pause in the middle. We can see this is going to be important to get out of here, hugging the apex tight and then trying to get that traction which the new surface should provide quite early. It's a little bit uphill, then sweeping through the gentle 8, trying to keep to the left of the circuit. And if we pause the car here, the video here, we can see we've got the white line. There's also a skerrick of track just beyond the white line, which you can see the driver here is using all that extra little bit of track to open up turn 9. So that's something already to keep in mind. Turn 9's fast corner, we want to carry that speed all the way down towards turn 11, so it's important. Again, if we pause the car on the apex here of turn 9, using a lot of curb, and there's a lot of dirt there as well that drivers have torn up over time, trying to maximize that. So immediately my mind goes towards whether supercars will have some tyres there, so that'll be something to watch out for. If we advance to the exit, there is quite a bit of exit curb there, the standard red and white exit curb, quite flat, quite shallow. Then there's some backfill concrete behind that, but it runs out of road extremely quickly, so then you're faced with dirt and grass. So that you can see how touring cars approach that. I can see a lot of dirt being kicked up, a lot of drivers dropping a wheel on the backside there, trying to maximize the speed through this very fast corner. Up through the gears, a little bit of a straight here through the gentle sweeper of 10, and then the very long, almost quite complex corner at 11. Gentle entry, and you can see the driver's trying to hug it out wide for as long as possible before tucking it back to have the car nice and straight on the exit to maximize the run down the longest straight on the track. Now, using the radius and straight method as I outline in the complete race driver course to try and get that free time down the straight when you're in a straight line and you're full throttle. You don't want to be getting to full throttle later than your competitors. So it's super important here. A little bit of track rising, exit curb, it's usable. 2 widths there we can see. Down this back straight, down this sometimes used drag strip. A little bit of track surfacing mid-track. Then there's plentiful brake markers, 200, 150, down towards 150 as well. Then this interesting turn 12, so longer straight, but it's quite a gradual corner. Again, relatively flat curb, sawtooth curb, but quite flat. Turning off that drag strip straight, And again, I'm going to be interesting to see what supercars do here, because they'll be taking a lot of curb onto the grass if there's no method or tyres to stop drivers from overuse there. So that'll be something to watch. Then the track sort of drops down. So if we pause between turns 12 and 13, you're braking all the way, still decelerating the car through 12 and slowing it down to 13, which is quite tight, the right-hander. So that it's going to enable the driver to brake quite late at 12, then continuing to decelerate through 12. 13's downhill. Again, got that patch, and again can use a lot of curb here. You can see this driver's using huge amount of curb from my forward, really shortcutting the track, which is what you want to do, and also trying to open up the last corner 14 so we're not crammed on the entry to 14. So a little bit of a wide approach, mid-track approach for the turning into turn 14. And we pause it here on the entry. You can also see this is where the pit entry road's going to be, so making sure we know where pit entry is always a good idea. And in a race with pit stops that supercars will have, that'll be super important for drivers to test that during practice, to push the limits on the entry, to see where they can brake. Braking marker for pit entry is just as important as any other brake marker on the circuit, so no doubt that'll be tested in practice. And then it's on to the final corner, turn 14. Then we've got some curbing on the exit, just one width of curb, a little bit of extra track, small grass verge, and then it's very close to the pit wall on the exit here, and we're already onto the straight and all the grid markings. So that's a lap visually. I think the things that quickly stand out to me on this little visual indicator is the opportunity for shortcutting if there's not tyres there. Some gentle undulations, now we're seeing the track in 3D, and that there's a number of surface changes. So all those things, already putting that into the memory bank, into the thought process before get to the track of how all those things are going to affect the balance of the car, and how as a driver you can influence the car and place the car to maximize and improve your lap time. So that's round one of looking at some video. Now let's see if we can scour for some more from a different car, maybe something more akin to what supercars will be driving on the weekend. Next step is to move on to something that's a little bit more akin to what supercars are going to be driving. That's using a NZ V8. Found a video here of Andre Heimgartner. So let's have a look what a heavy car that's probably under-tired, V8 engine, how that car approaches this circuit. So first thing to realize is that this is from 9 years ago, 10 years ago, so track has changed. So we're probably not looking for any track surfaces. Immediately the first thing we notice is how Andre's V'ing the corner at turn 1, helping the exit. Using a lot of curb and a lot of road there at turns 2 and 3. Trying to get it back here for 4. Using that curb again. 5, slow corner. A lot of curb, shortcutting the track. Bit of exit curb. I think down here is going to be important. It's going to be hard with brake locking. Easy to lock a right front or a left front. So trying to brake in a really straight line. You can see he's hugging the apex there. Using a bit of road, constantly turning, always turning. The rear tyres are going to be really hard. Going through the fast turn 9, using every bit of track can. Then the approach here is quite interesting at 11, trying to brake in a nice straight line. Obviously easy to lock tyres up. V'ing the corner again. Got a chapter all about that in the Complete Race Driver. Maximising the exit from V'ing that corner. Down the long straight, and again this is quite old footage, so we've got to take it with a pinch of salt. The other thing that's different here is have some tyres installed. So that the approach here is completely different to what we're gonna be like, but that just gives us a little bit of an idea what a touring car, how that approach is going to be, and how that differs from that Formula Ford. So an update to the track from March 2024, just a month before supercars get there. We can see turn 1 has been resurfaced, and we can see the new pit exit we spoke about earlier feeding onto the track. Turn 2 has now an extra sawtooth curb adjacent to the existing ripple curb there on the apex. That'll provide some more track width to supercars. Turns 6 and 7, or more 7, has been resurfaced. So just here you can see the join on the exit of 6 leading into turn 7, and that's all the way around there. And again, new resurfacing on the entry to turn 9 and through turn 9. Provide grip, and we can fast forward through this section here through 10, 11, down the back straight, and 12. They have put a backfilled concrete there behind the curb, which we surmise they might do. Still not sure whether they're going to put tyres there for supercars. And then on to 13 as well. That's same again, they've backfilled that curb behind the existing sawtooth curb, and this is all resurfaced around this last part of the circuit here at 14. So that's just an update, and we can have a look at the top-down view, which shows the resurfacing in more detail. So here is Taupo from above at the beginning of January 2024, and we can clearly see the resurfacing works that have been undertaken at turns 1, the patches through 2, 3, 4, definitely 7, 9. You can see these patches that were there on the other videos, and then again that last corner. So if we zoom in, you can see they're all been cut at like a 45-degree angle to stop any bumps. You can see a little bit more about the radius of turn 1, and also the new pit exit. Rather than coming around this way, sort of feeding a little bit more into the outside radius of turn 1. You can see the works going on there with that curb we just described at turn 2, with a double sawtooth curb. All around the rest of the track, resurfacing here at the exit of 6 and into 7, and sort of see the patches through 8. Again, that new resurfacing cut at an angle at 9. No real change at 10, 11. And then the back straight here, to see how gentle that entry is, gives you a little bit more insight to turn 12, where they put that extra backfill at 12 and 13, and then again that new resurfacing from the last corner down to the start finish line and pit entry. So that just gives a little bit of a overview of Taupo resurfacing using Google Earth. If you can't get to the track for real, then the next best thing is going to be, of course, in the simulator. So I'm here at my home sim rig. We're going to cut a few laps around Taupo, and I'm going to show you what to look for, how to approach driving a sim like this. We're not going to lap time chase. We're not going to try and get the best possible lap in the first instance. We're going to try and understand the track and really learn from it, rather than just trying to set a personal best time and throw all the learning out the window. So it's really important to try and focus on understanding and retaining information, rather than just driving fast and not actually understanding how you're fast at the track, because that's not going to translate to real life. Yes, the simulators are certainly accurate and getting better all the time, and depending on the quality of the equipment and your sim rig, it can be, a really immersive experience. But if you're approaching the whole simulator training the wrong way, then it's not going to help you. It's just purely lap time chasing, trying to find the last tenth or two here, and you're really drilling down into the complexities of the simulator equipment more than you are learning the track, or really thinking about how that translates from the simulator to the track. And that's key. That's everything about simulator training, is taking what you know in the simulator to the track. It's not about doing the fastest ever lap time in a simulator. It's about learning and translating to the track. So enough talking, let's go have a look at some footage from driving Taupo. So here I am in a Formula car, just so we don't have that letterbox view, just so we can look at the track model, understand it a little bit better, get a feeling for the curbs and the general track layout. Got a few ideas in our head about which corners were important to get good exits on. So we're just going to start exploring that a little in the simulator. It's not the exact car that we're going to drive, but it gives us a fairly good idea of the layout of the track, and just so we can see everything, check the sim model. Find out which corners are important, which ones we're going to need to work on ourselves. And start to see already that the right rear tyre is going to be pretty important, and it's going to get loaded up a lot at this circuit. A lot of left-handers that require lateral traction, so when the car's laterally loaded, trying to work on this long radius corner here, because we know that's going to be important to get a slingshot down this back straight. We don't want to do too many laps, just enough laps to get a bit of a feel for the circuit, to understand what's going on. So I might just do one more lap here. Alrighty, here we are at Taupo, this time in a supercar. Just getting that different view through the windscreen rather than a single-seater Formula car. So we're going to treat this like a half-hour practice session. Just getting to know the track a little bit more, like we would in real life. Not trying to set lap records out the pits, but just doing as you would in a real life practice session. Just learning the track, working on those corners that we identified that need strong exits. And of course we've got the reference lap up the top, so that can give us a bit of an idea as to what the best approach is into some corners versus others. If we want to prioritize our entries and exits, we're going to get that real-time feedback from that performance delta. Working on this crucial turn 11, we want to cut it back and get a really good exit. As I said, we're going to do like half an hour of practice, just developing more and more as we go on. Already we can see we're going to be able to shortcut a lot on this track with the curbs. Already my mind's going to what supercars are going to do to try and prevent that for drivers, because that'll be a big thing, I feel, with how shallow these curbs are and how much advantage there is from shortcutting these curbs. Experimenting with some different lines, using that performance delta to help see if it's better or worse, but also remembering that it's a sim and it's not real life, so just really trying to get the rhythm of the place right. So you can see here we can use a lot of curb. That's going to be something to be aware of when we hit the track for real. So I've done my 30 minutes of practice, and then I can step through qualifying simulation, trying to beat my practice time in just 1 or 2 laps, to work on my qualifying technique, and then what I would do would be to do a race, and just try and be consistent as I can. Maybe 3-4 tenths off the ultimate pace. Maybe even bring in some tyre wear to try and manage that, because that's going to be a huge thing at Taupo. That right rear tyre, with the way the track surface is, and just the acceleration requirements when the car's laterally loaded, it's going to be a real tyre chewer, I think. So it's going to be hard for the drivers to manage that, and the teams. So that's how I'd use the simulator to train. Do that practice, how I showed you, how I explained it. Do some qualifying preparation, then do some race simulation to work on your consistency at the track, because that's ultimately where all the prizes are awarded, is in the race itself. And then the other thing we can do is that I recorded all this with telemetry, so I can look at the data, spits it out in a Motec format. I was using Assetto Corsa here, but there's also options for iRacing to look at Motec data, and that's going to give me another perspective on the track, look at which corners I was going too late in and getting poor exits, and which corners I was maybe braking too early for but getting better exits, and seeing what the right approach is, seeing if there's any bad habits that I might not have picked up on when I was actually driving, but when my focus can be completely on the data, I can look at that. So it's another great way of getting race ready ahead of being at the track. So let's look at some of that sample data now. So here is the data of the fastest lap from Assetto Corsa. We have the speed in purple, throttle in green, green for go, red brakes, red for stop, steering angle. We also have gear, engine RPM, and then some damper positions or suspension positions. So this helps give a bit of an overview of the circuit. We can see the highest speed is on the run down to turn 12, down the back straight, around about 250 kilometers an hour. Slowest point is quite similar between turn 7 and also turn 1 and turn 5. You can see here on the maps, not too far away either. And you can definitely see the start-stop nature and the lateral loaded exits that the car needs. Sort of from half throttle to full throttle through turn 1, turn 2 here, applying the power gently out of 5, out of 7. And so that's definitely going to be hurting the tyres, as well as the knowledge that we have about the surface being quite abrasive on the old parts of the circuit. Obviously, the new parts are going to provide a lot more grip. The first fast turn 9, then definitely turn 12 here. Sorry, excuse me, turn 11 here. Definitely turn 11 here is somewhere that's been straight away. I can see that made a bad mistake there, 11. So this is where really you can use your data to help your driving technique. If we compare to a better lap through that corner in white and the overlay, we can see the white's a lot better. That carried the speed in, slowed it down in the middle of the corner, and then got on the power once, rather than the fastest lap with the green trace here. I've picked up the throttle, then had to get back out of it before finally getting on the throttle, but lost all that time down the straight. Also used third gear instead of second, and that's allowed to pick up the throttle without any wheel spin a lot easier. So this just gives a bit of an overview at 11 as to room for improvement, and to open our eyes ahead of being there at the track about experimenting this type of line. It's going to be dependent on a whole number of things, whether that's the correct gear, second or third for a supercar. But if we were to approach that there as an example, then we'd definitely be wanting to try and V this corner like I've done in the white, rather than brake early, try and get on the throttle super early. I know we spoke about the exit being really important, but sometimes that's what happens. You try and get on the throttle extremely early by cracking the throttle, but if it's more than what the car can handle, then you end up having this big lift here, and you actually end up costing yourself time. So you want to do what the white line the white throttle trace is showing, cracking the throttle and getting on it in one motion. And you can see there, although we haven't cracked the throttle as early, it's definitely been in one fluid motion, you know, 1/10 of a second there, and that's going to carry all the way down the straight. So one final thing to do is to create a track walk sheet. I find this is really helpful and beneficial for all drivers that I work with. And that's to take all the information that we've learned and put it on a bit of paper. So whether you print it out and take it on your track walk, or you've got it electronically on your iPad or tablet or whatever it is when you get to the circuit, summarize everything you've learnt, you know, the gear you think you're going to be in, where you're going to brake, all those types of information points, put them on a bit of paper. Then as you're walking around the track, scribble some notes or edit the document, and you can do that again at the end of the weekend as well. So whatever you've learnt at the track, you can put into practice for the next year and just keep that information going. So here's an example that I've done for Taupo. So this gives you a bit of an idea about the gear, braking point, turn in, whether there's surface changes, all those type of things. And that's really going to help you connect the dots between what I've shown you here today, everything we've learned, and then when you get to the track. So we're bridging that gap and completing that loop to help you become a better driver. So there you have it. That was Taupo. I hope that's given you some food for thought about how to take a structured approach and a holistic approach to learning a brand new circuit. Of course, as I mentioned at the start, getting there and driving the track for real, that's going to be the best thing you can do. But that's not always an option for a lot of people, as you mentioned earlier. And even if you do go to a track and you drive a car, then doing your homework like how I've shown you today is still super important. You know, you can bet your bottom dollar that all the supercar drivers have done their homework before they've got to Taupo, primarily aided by the supercars teams. But what I've shown you here today is how you, as a standalone driver or even a small team, how you can approach learning a new track and really taking that structured approach to it, and, you know, trying to get all that information into your brain, into your subconscious, that just speeds up that learning process when you hit the track. You know, time on the track is precious, and a lot of the work is really done in the background, like I've shown you today. So next time you hit a new track for the first time, do your homework, and then I can guarantee you're gonna be quicker than your rivals if you've done all the work before you get there. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope to be able to do more of this content in the future, so we can do all the Australian circuits and break them down corner by corner and give you some advice on how best to tackle them. Thanks again. Enjoy your racing.